There he is. Hi, Matthew. I think we met in Israel last year as well, briefly. By the way, a quick shameless plug, the very best English language news magazine on the planet by far. I don't know how you guys do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is a fascinating topic that we've been given, which is really the power of, the creative power of collaboration. I think when I first started covering business in America, it was during the dot-com bubble, and the general idea of collaboration was really not very high on anyone's agenda. Silicon Valley culture seemed to be all about creative destruction and outwitting the big dumb companies, as they were referred to, and a lot of big companies didn't seem to really know how to handle the upstart world, and you know, a few of them created their own in-house venture firms, none of them, I think, with much success. And now we're in an age where I think things are really starting to change, and we have on my far left, your far right, Ronny Conway, who is a partner with Andreessen Horowitz, a scion of a great investing startup dynasty, who previously worked at Google before really taking on the very early stage seeding role in his new firm. And then to my immediate left, Beth Comstock, who's a senior executive at GE and who most recently has taken on the task of overseeing GE's sort of venturing activities and trying to bring them more into the industrial side of the business and less into the really financially driven part. And so I just really want each of you maybe to spend about 5 minutes talking about how you thought about how you relate to, in your case, Ronny, to working with big companies, and how what you seek to gain from that, and how you've structured collaboration. But first, Beth, at GE, how you thought about your engagement with the startup world.
Well, luckily, if anyone was here this morning, you got to hear my boss, Jeff, set me up quite well. He's my wingman here today, so I thank him for that. But a couple of things I would say we're just noticing in the marketplace and then related to GE. First of all, as we look around the world, in fact, we survey this. We, for the past couple of years, have gone out and surveyed executives around the globe to see what they think about the state of innovation and what models are working. There's some very interesting insights, but one of the key themes that comes out that every business person is grappling with is the need to collaborate, and the recognition that it's very, very hard. And what we find, no matter what country executives are in, they're all struggling with similar things, which is the problems many of us seek to solve are too big for any one entity. Big companies know they need to work with small companies, government agencies and academia, and so there's this interesting ecosystem that we all talk about and we all recognize we need to do it. And why? Why do we do it? Because we want to share risk, we want to create, fill gaps of capability, we want to go faster, we want to go global when we're local, we want to go local when we're global. There are a whole host of reasons. We want more creativity. So there are a whole host of reasons, but what the theme is that there's much more recognition now, and that we also recognize it's hard. So I'll give you that as a backdrop. I think GE certainly has come to that honest. For the past decade, I think what we've seen our company on a journey, one is much more focused on big industrial themes, big industrial businesses, what we stand for, but in industries that are very complex, very difficult to navigate, and on a global scale. We're talking energy, we're talking healthcare, we're talking increasingly data and analytics in those, and transportation. These are very complicated, even for a company as big as ours. And so you get to a point where you realize you have to partner. It used to be partnership meant, okay, it's 50-50, but even if it's 50-50, we're still in charge. To now, hey, a 20% stake, a 5% stake, maybe other ways we want to invest in your success. So that's been a shift, and I'll come back to why that is. So I think and I think there's a certain humility that comes with just living in the world we live in, where you have to accept you don't have all the answers. We have, some of my colleagues here today represent our research lab, some of the best thinking, I guarantee, anywhere, certainly in our company, but they don't have all the answers. They can't figure it all out. So I think you get to this honest to say, we've got to move faster, we don't have all the answers, we need new models from partnering. So that's led us to a host of things, but most recently for a renewed effort in our venture area, where for us it was, look, we need to find startups and we need to partner with venture teams that can help us get access to talent, access to insights, fill gaps that we may have in offerings as we go to market. And then if you're a startup, you're looking at a big company like GE and you're saying, gosh, I don't even know where to go, I don't know how to navigate them, they're going to squash me like a bug, they don't get my problems, they think they move fast, it's 30 years later for me. So there's all those, so if you're a small company looking at GE, you're like, so we came to the realization that if you're a startup, what you need from a GE is more than money. There's a lot of sources in the world for money, and certainly we want to be able to contribute money, but you want access to technical capabilities, so collaboration and validation from our technical labs, and access to our commercial teams, which is where I spent a lot of my career, our sales and marketing efforts, to say, where is the market going? Can we do a pilot with the customer? Can we share revenue and help fill gaps from a startup perspective that GE can't get to? So that's been the evolution that's led us to take a much more focused effort on our venture perspective, focus it on industrial, and help us fill in some of the gaps and create partnerships that create scale and capability for both of us.
Right, Ronny.
Yeah, so on the Andreessen Horowitz side, we're bringing a different model to the venture capital community. Most VC firms historically have been 5, 10, 15, 20 general partners, a few support staff, and that makes up the entire firm. Our firm today is made up of 70 people, 7 general partners, and then about 65 others that are helping basically in areas where we want to help our founders become great CEOs. So those areas are talent and recruiting, executive recruiting, marketing, market development, and corporate development. And the way to think about these organizations is not necessarily like outsourced recruiting, for instance, but more of a consultative role. So if you take our recruiting organization, if you're a startup, you're looking for a PhD engineer, we won't do that search for you, but we will do is say, look, like, here's what PhD engineers are going for in the marketplace, here's what's hot, here's what's not, those kinds of things. We play much more of a consultative role with our startups. And then one of the key places where we interact with a lot of large corporations, including GE, is on the market development side. So we hold about 1,200 corporate briefings a year. And so on the GE side, for instance, we'll have various business units come in and we'll get a list of their objectives and then cater a day with all of our startups. They come in and present, and then where their partnership opportunities, obviously they'll follow up offline. And so that's like a big way that we're collaborating. And then as far as like the way we invest, we do anything very super early stage, $50,000 investments in 2 guys in the garage with the product, to later stage investments, mid stage investments in Twitter and Facebook and a few other companies there. And, one of the big themes that comes up and that supports this investment activity and this investment structure is the software eats the world theme. So venture firms historically have gone into biotech or green tech basically to weather the storm. So as software gets hit hard, there'll be another large vertical that venture can invest in. We think as software eats the world, software is going to go after real estate, agriculture, finance, all these large sectors. So we focus on just software investing.
Now, when you invite in a big company like GE, what are the rules? What are the ground rules? What are your expectations? Is there non-disclosure? Is there a sense of how you manage to make sure that they get a sense of what you can offer them without taking it themselves?
Yeah, I actually think that it's the more open people can be, the better in that kind of environment. So the more open we can be with GE, the more we can understand their objectives, the more we can understand what portfolio companies are relevant for them to put in front of them. And then also not only our portfolio companies, but other companies, just given where we are in the ecosystem, as we see interesting companies, that are in the ecosystem that might be able to help GE, we'll also send them their way, because the goal for us is not to help a portfolio company long term, although that is a very good thing. The goal for us is to build a network and to be a good participant, or to be a value-add participant in the network. And as we do that more, there'll be more partnership opportunities, and there'll be better opportunities for our startups.
I presume, I mean, if you were investing in startups that were directly taking on some of GE's own products, you would have to manage it in a different way, would you?
Potentially. The answer is yes, but I don't see that happening very much. I don't see us investing in jet engines or anything like that. And then one of the other interesting opportunities that we're just starting to see is this concept of the Internet of Things, right? Where there's a software layer on top of, let's say your appliances, for instance. And so in that case, I think there'll be a software layer on top of the appliances that GE probably built. But who knows how these things evolve? That's an interesting opportunity.
But Beth, I mean, I think this goes to another point that was occurring to me, was that, I mean, if we go back 10, 15 years, it was all, the concern was that the innovative dilemma that companies were aware that there was a lot of disruptive technology out there, and they didn't want that, they were caught in this state where they couldn't figure out whether to invest in it because it would cannibalize their existing business and so forth. And it seems that what you're doing, if it's adding a layer of software to your existing businesses, I mean, that doesn't present the same kind of innovative dilemma that maybe big companies that built a mess with their venture activities 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, it could. I mean, obviously, as you know, business has just changed so much in the past decade. Your partners are your competitors are your customers. I mean, so I think it is quite complicated. There may be instances where a company that Andreessen Horowitz is investing in is a disruptor, but that may be just the reason we want to get to know them. And so I think our views have changed quite a bit in that. I think what works really well, just to hit that point a second, is when we sit down and we talk very strategically, here's what we're trying to do, here's where the company's priorities are. In our case, looking at sort of the big things, the jet engines, the MRI machines, and talk about the data they start to put off, and give a sense, and you start to give an Andreessen Horowitz a sense of the dynamics. We can show up, and Jeff Immelt can go into Mark Andreessen and go, look, I've got a $150 million backlog of service orders. So if you're thinking of building or supporting a data analytics company that might be able to do this in-flight navigation, you can feel pretty good that a company like GE we've got monetization taken care of for you. So those kinds of insights, the more we know about each other's strategy. So, it very much starts with an understanding of us, of what technologies are you seeing, and us trying to help them think of applications. So I'd say we're all, in some ways, working toward the same goal. We want to seed these industries, we want startups to happen, we want to make each other smarter. And yeah, there may be some disruptions that come along, and hopefully we're smart enough to do something smart with them as opposed to fear them.
And what's come out so far from your collaboration with Andreessen Horowitz?
Well, one, I think we've just gotten smarter on the strategy of each company. I mean, the people here earlier heard from Bill Rue, who leads our software center. So this idea of Ronny talked about the Internet of Things, for us, the industrial Internet, so the Internet of really big things, and all the data they put off, 1 terabyte of data per flight of a jet engine. So that putting those challenges out there. And so we started to do some pretty interesting partnerships on some data and analytics companies. One, we just inked a commercial deal across GE with one of their investment companies, with a company that crunches a lot of good data for us. We're going to use it everywhere from software and services to digital marketing. So we've been able, and as they've gotten to know us, they're able to say, it might apply here, but then they see other use cases, so hopefully we're able to help them build confidence in this particular company has a lot of runway. So it's a lot of it around commercial partnerships at this point.
And do you see, Ronny, do you see this being also, in the longer term, an exit strategy for you to sell some of the company or startups to a company like GM or GE, or is it very much a market development?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule out exit strategies. Where I focus on investing is like the super early stage. So, it's 2 guys in a room, and so if you're going after a big market, that's all I really worry about. And then along the way, like building some BD partnerships. So I would say that Andreessen Horowitz is much more focused on building business development partnerships along the way. And then as a corporate development partnership makes sense, we would definitely pursue that path. I think one of the sectors that I failed to mention is corp dev. So it's certainly something that's very important to us. We have like 4 people on that team today, and that will continue to grow. So I'd say it starts with the media relationship, and maybe we'll escalate to a corporate development relationship, and that would be on a case-by-case basis.
It's interesting when you talk about exit strategy. Some of the big fear that venture has traditionally had with big companies is, oh, you're just coming in here so you can keep the price low. You want to get an exit of this company at a low price. I could also give you the flip side. We certainly haven't seen this with Andreessen Horowitz, but we've certainly worked with venture partners where they're all too happy for us to take an exit on something that didn't work out quite well. And that clearly, to me, points to a sort of lack of understanding of strategy. The company's not performing, why are we going to take it over? I mean, sometimes that might be an opportunity, right? But so there are some times when it works and sometimes when it doesn't.
What is you mentioned moving away from the old 50% stake approach. What is the investment philosophy now?
Well, I think we have a wide array. I mean, very much a portfolio view. I think for the past, I would say the past few years, we were largely come in B round, sort of B round or later. Like what Ronny's leading at Andreessen, we are much more focused in trying to figure out earlier stage commitments. Accelerators, incubators, they're very attractive to us. So I think our model is definitely changing, and the percent stake we take, it really varies, and you do follow-ons and whatnot. But generally for us, I think you'd find us in the $10 million initial stage, traditionally B round, but looking to do less earlier stage.
And are you forming similar collaborative partnerships with other venture firms?
We are, and directly with startups as well. And one of the things we've invested in are the kind of resources in our venture team to do the collaboration. That we found that's critical. When we had just an investing practice, and that was in many cases very successful. It was largely energy and healthcare. We've expanded a team here in software and over time advanced manufacturing. It has to be, as I said, more than money, and so we had to invest resources from our technical labs to say, hey, let me help that startup validate that technology, as we've done with a great wind company in Israel. We've had to commit commercial resources to say, let me own this, because somebody in a GE business unit has to stand up, take this to a customer. We have to sometimes pay on the operating side so it's not dilutive on the equity to get a pilot going. So we've had to very much invest in those resources to make collaboration real, not just a talking point.
And Ronny, as you talk to your marketing teams, they've gone work for companies and doing market development. Where are you seeing the most action over the next few years happening in terms of this collaboration work?
Yeah, so on the enterprise side, there's obviously the movement from on-prem to cloud. And I think that the way the ecosystem will look after the move to cloud will be completely different. So infrastructure, storage, application layers, all that will look very different, and we'll invest heavily there. On the consumer side, which is where I spend most of my time, I still think that we're on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to consumer mobile apps. So I think a lot of the successful applications today are basically the PC experience just ported over to the mobile phone. There's a couple of good examples of things that are not like that, Uber being one. So Uber doesn't work on just a PC. We have a company in the space called Your Mechanic. It's also a good example of that. So I think the mobile application side on the consumer internet will continue to grow. And then the other one that I'm just particularly very fascinated with, and this has happened over the last couple months, is this idea of the Internet of Things, which keeps on coming up here. I think that there's a tremendous opportunity there, and that also takes into consideration like the wearable internet. So the job on Nike Fuel, like those kinds of things. Like I think that software will continue to eat our clothing.
I mean, how you see the consumer being a fast adopter there, maybe, rather than big companies like GE and so on? Do you think both are going to?
I think it's both. I think that we see we'll see it on both sides. We were talking backstage about a company called Kaggle, which I was very surprised to hear that GE is using. It's a company that we invested in, and so I think that all of these larger corporations as they continue to invest more and more in these companies, they'll be able to adopt these technologies and these platforms quicker and quicker.
Do you want to talk briefly about the Kaggle experiment?
Well, as part of our industrial internet efforts, one of the things we did with Kaggle, if you don't know Kaggle, it's a community of data scientists. And so we, together with an airline customer, released a lot of data about flight navigation and put it out to data scientists and said, develop some algorithms that help planes land cleaner, faster, safer. And it's still in the middle of it, but the early results are very impressive that when you put it out to a community of people who think very differently, they're doing so. So I think that's a lot of what you're starting to see, the ability to take very complicated data and crunch it very fast. We don't have that capability all within ourselves, so we need to go outside and partner with others to do that.
I mean, when we were talking earlier, the Internet of Things, or the Internet, is clearly going to be absolutely critical to your future as a company. And so I guess the question I'm talking about is how do you divide up going outside and building up, thinking how you think about building up a capacity in software that you haven't built at the moment?
Well, I think for us it's building a capacity in both technology manufacturing and software. So we want to do both. We still build really big, important things, and we need data and analytics that go around those big things. So we need to build capabilities where someone can think of doing both of those. It's a jet engine that has sensors that exudes the data that then the software people can do something with. So increasingly, one of the reasons we've built up our presence in Silicon Valley is to work more with startups that maybe come out of the consumer space and can think, how do you start to apply that to industry? But it's quite interesting. What's been happening in the software space is now happening to hardware. So much more opening up. You're getting hardware startups, hardware incubators. It's happening in the consumer, wearable devices, the Internet of Things. So these worlds are interestingly coming together. And I think maybe 10 years from now, there'll be much less delineation in some of those.
And likewise, I mean, Ronny, 10, 15 years ago, the Silicon Valley mindset was, let's build these companies that are going to just knock the old incumbents out of the industry and replace them with completely new models, do things much better. I mean, is working with big companies a sign that ambition is dying, that maybe in the world where the IPOs doesn't happen so often, you simply have to collaborate and work with the incumbents in a way you didn't have to before?
No, I think there'll always be old, stodgy incumbents that are willing to be taken down by the young startup. But I think it's a really, really positive sign that the larger companies are really reaching out now to Silicon Valley and really learning, like, okay, here's what's going on, here's what's going on, here's what's going on, here's what's going on in cloud, so that doesn't happen. So I think that there's still a huge opportunity for startups today to become like the big companies of tomorrow. But I think that over time, the GEs and the other large corporations of the world are going to do a better job of understanding like the underlying trends.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I have time. Is that last word to you, Beth?
Well, just to build on what Ronny was saying about where things are going in terms of collaboration, I think I'm actually within the clock, and I think my time just ran out. So I think what's happening is that companies like ours, we've got to figure this out together. And the reality is, if you just stay insular, you're not going to get there. So because the time's running out, I won't rant on that. But the reality is, you got to change, and you got to stay in tune with the times, and you got to open yourselves up, and that's the path that we're on. At the end of the day, a startup wants to be an end-up. And an end-up wants to have the vitality and the agility and be as nimble as a startup. And together, we can do that. We know scale, you know agility, and that's where I think the beauty of it is.
Very well, that being note, Beth, Ronny, thank you very much.
This was a a great example of not only the large corporation maturing, becoming better, experimenting more aggressively in the space, but also the venture firm trying to become better at engaging with large companies, because for many years they didn't. So, great discussion.